Hello class, today's lesson is going to be the role of text in graphic design. Overall, that's talking about typography and fonts. What it is the shape of letters, not the size or the boldness, or if you italicize something, that's all styles. But this is actually the shape of the letters. In our first picture right here, you have the letters A, B, D, and R on the far right side, how you would understand and look at them today. Now, over time, it does not mean that the letter A was always shaped as it is now. I would describe the letter A as an upside down or pointing up arrow with a line across the middle. That is the standard shape. It can have serifs on the bottom, like the letter A does there, but we'll get to those and I'll explain what that later. But that's not the basic form. There's really only 3 strokes to the pen that you need to make for a letter A. That was not always the case. If you go back to 2500 BC, you can see that it actually looks like more like a backwards S. And then in the 1000 BC, it looks like it's an A, but laying down. It's missing some of its parts in about 500 BC, and even 200 AD, it still hadn't quite formed to what we know today, but it was pretty much getting there. And so now we have the letter A as we know it today, and all our other letters have a basic letter form that if you draw it, that's what it's going to look like, and that's what you're giving your viewer with your drawing. You're converting a meaning to them. Over time, we can categorize our fonts into several categories. If you take another graphic design class or a digital design class, they may have tons of different categories. I am limiting it to just 6 that you need to know. At the bottom, there are 6 fonts categories that you need to know. Now, make sure you know the difference between a category and a font. I determine it as like baseball teams and in the term baseball team. So if I said name a baseball team, you can't say baseball team. That's not a name of a baseball team. You would have to, the name of a baseball team is a category. To give me things that fit into that category, you'd have to name Red Sox, Yankees, Orioles. Those are names of baseball teams. But if I said, give me the category of baseball teams, name a baseball team, and you said baseball team, that is not right. It's the same thing here. My categories are text, Roman, sans serif, square serif, script, and novelty. So all the fonts that you'll ever see can fit into one of those 6 categories in my class. If you were going to break it down even further, you could. We can go to sites like dafont.com and look at all the fonts, and there's millions of them. But you don't have to do that for this class. If you put it in one of those 6 categories, you're going to be okay. So I'm going to explain what each one of those mean. The first example here is a Roman one. Times New Roman is probably one of the most popular Roman ones today. You're going to think to yourself, where do you want to use those? Where are people telling you to use Times New Roman? So think about that for a second. And I'll answer the question. Your English teacher is going to ask you to use that. It is viewed as a very professional looking font. That's why when you do essays, you use Times New Roman. Why is it professionally looking? Well, all Romans have serifs. So that's the first word you want to learn during this lesson is serifs. What is a serif? If you look at the bottom of the A, it has these 2 little feet. That's what basically serifs are, feet added to a letter form. So any part of it that is not really necessary, if you just did 3 lines, the one that looks like the arrow and the one across, that could be an A. But if you add the serif, it adds a more professional tone. And in my class, all Romans have serifs. So they should look like, also they were done by a machine. A person wouldn't actually draw these lines that straight. It shouldn't look like a hand would do it. So it should look like a machine should do it. It should look like it's more well done that way. So in my class, you're going to know that all Romans have serifs, and also there's another category of font called square serifs. They also have serifs. I could have broken this up. I chose not to, because the difference between square serifs and Romans going back to Roman times, they should look like more broad, a little bit in their things, like more of a sculpture to it. What the Romans used to do, and if you go to Rome nowadays, you'd still see it. They used to chisel into the Colosseum and other their buildings and put Roman numerals in it when they did it. So that's what the font is imitating, those type of machine done things. Now we don't think of as a hammer and a chisel as like a machine, but at that time in Roman times that was like a great machine. That was like their best machines. We have computers that do it now, so we can do it actually even better. But that's what it is. The shape there, and all square serif fonts also have serifs on it. It means it has the little endpoints on it. It should still look like a machine done it. You can't just do this with a pencil and pen in your hand. It takes something a little more extra to do it. Okay. The next one is a sans serif. A sans serif, or the word sans, means without. So that's without serifs. If you look at the letter A here or all the other letters, it only has the 3 letter strokes. It doesn't have any feet on it. So that's because it's all sans serifs. Sans serifs are still mechanically produced, meaning that you'd expect to see it by a machine doing it. Not a hand would actually draw these lines that straight. The other part, why would you use them? This is very good for getting people's attention. If you drive down the road, you see a stop sign, it's going to be done in a sans serif type font in that category because they grab your attention. You use them for headlines. You can use them for titles. It's not recommended to use them in like essays or resumes and stuff like that, but people do. It is still professional enough to do that, but it is really meant to just get your attention. It isn't actually the most professional font. It is a little less. Now there's Arial. Show of hands. Have you heard of Arial? I'm guessing you all have your hands up right now because everybody's heard of Arial. It's one of the default fonts on almost all computers nowadays. There's another one here too, Helvetica. Show of hands, how many people have seen Helvetica? Now, when I did this in my class, a lot less hands went up. It's not as well known, but it actually, historically, it has a longer date. Arial only dates back to like about the 80s and 90s. Helvetica dates back to the 50s. There's a reason for that. You see Helvetica up here, right next to the name, it has the letters TM. What does TM stand for? It stands for trademark. So they trademarked this, meaning it was owned by somebody. And the company that owns it, Linotype owned it. It was the most popular sans serif around. And then Microsoft came around and they wanted to start their own computers, and they wanted a sans serif that they could use on their computers. Well, they went to Helvetica, the company that owns it, and said, can we put this on our computers? They said yes, but, big but, you had to pay us. Well, Bill Gates and the power at Microsoft at the time did not want to pay them. So what they did was they created Arial. And now I'll let you see the two next to each other. They are very similar. Sans serifs are very similar. It's hard to make them look different when you can't add these feet, you can't add these design elements. You got to stick more to the letter type. So it is harder to do it. Don't look at the boldness. The boldness is a little different, but there are differences here. Where are the differences? I'll give you the first one. The small letter A over at Arial by Helvetica, it has a little like curve to it, whereas the small one in the Arial does not. The capital letter Q, the angle of the line is different. The capital letter R, the downward stroke here, and this one is a little more rounded in Helvetica, whereas Arial is like downward straight. You have the small t. The angle of the cut is different. You have the angle there and like a straight angle there. And then the capital G is also different. If you notice on Arial, it's all one like stroke. This one, it's almost like two strokes. You have a right angle right there all the way down to the bottom of the page for Helvetica. There are also minor differences. Both C's have minor differences. The small f is a minor difference. Small y is minor difference. But those others that I mentioned are major differences. And at the very top of the slide, you'll see comparison for a loss loot. Well, why did I write that there? Well, when Helvetica found out that Microsoft was making Arial, do you think they were happy? No, of course not. And what do? What do companies do to each other when they're unhappy? They sued each other. So this was settled. It was determined, I should say. It was determined. Who do you think actually won? Do you think Microsoft won the case, or the company that owns Helvetica did? Well, since we all know what Arial is, Microsoft won. The jury that was decided that there is enough differences that this could legally be presented as like its own font. So think about that. That would probably be a question for this. Do you think that's right? Is that plagiarism? Is there enough differences to do it? So something you can think about. Those are all our mechanical fonts. These next ones should imitate handwriting. Whereas the other one, it's so straight line that you really have to be professional and like get it done right. This one is you have more leeway. You don't have to do that. So there I got two script fonts here, Jefferson and Edwardian script. The one on the left, Jefferson, whose handwriting is that supposed to mimic? Thomas Jefferson, Declaration of Independence. And then Edwardian, I don't know if he actually drew it or is just using the Edwardian times. That was a king that we had, or a king that Britain had at one time. So again, these are mimicking handwriting. There is one thing about script fonts that is always put down by graphic designers. If I handwrite or script write signature, my handwriting, my signature, is it going to be the exact same? If I write my signature 5 times, is it going to be exactly the same all 5 times? No. Even my own name will have like a little variation of differences because I can't perfectly put my handwriting, make my hand do the exact same thing every time. If I type it with Jefferson 5 times, is it going to be exactly the same? Yes, it is. So even though script is mimicking handwriting, it can't actually do it exactly like a person would handwrite. So it's there. You can still use it. It's good for like invitations. If you got a really nice gift, what might your mom ask you to do? For the person who gave you that gift, she might ask you to write a thank you note. Well, that you would actually write a thank you note. You might buy the card, but you would actually write something in it showing that you're taking the time and writing a thank you to the person personally. That's what this was supposed to mimic. A lot of times artists will do this that on their CD or on their CD covers, that their signature will be or their name will be script written. That's so that it's like we're taking the time to say hi to our customers. So again, a lot of times that's what a script is used for it, showing you're spending time to do it. Now this is text. Script is like cursive, so the letters interconnect. In text, they do not have to interconnect. It's more like printing. This is more like what you do at younger ages. Now you see Baroque text on the left there and say, I would never print like that. That is really like ornate. Monks used to do it that way. That's how they used to print it. I mean, we don't print like that nowadays. We print more closer to what that paintbrush one is. That's more our printing, but at one time that was. The difference between text and script is it should both mimic the hand, so like that you're writing it, but text does not interlock. You don't interlock your letters when you do printing. You do when you do cursive. Not in every letter, but at least the majority of letters. And then there's another one, another category called novelty, which basically is you didn't fit it in you didn't fit in any other category. So if you look at the one on the left, fajita, what does that remind you of? Probably Mexican food. The one on the right is wingdings. They're just symbols. I have a video for that you can watch. Why would people use that? Well, there is a reason for that, so you can do that. So that's the lesson that I'm going to give you today. So you will have to watch follow-up videos and make sure you answer the questions, and good luck on the work.